It's time for another episode of Let's Watch a Random 20 Minutes of GB News.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
You can always trust that Tom Harwood's going to bring the compelling stories of the week, can't you?
The bosses at Blackpool Zoo want people to dress up in giant inflatable bird costumes and scare off seagulls. Adam, first of all, what's it like wearing a chicken costume?
Now, you'd all agree that they're the most compelling stories of the week, surely.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels.
You're absolutely right, GB News. You do interview the people that the mainstream media ignore.
Roy Chubby Brown joins me now.
So my next guest is comedy legend Jim Davidson.
Two men with the musical Midas touch, right said Fred, join me now. Fred, Rich,
Good
great to have
evening.
you.
I mean, it astounds me. Why would the mainstream media not want to interview these quality guests?
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting.
Of course, because we've become accustomed to their accurate reporting, haven't we? Like the time that they tried to claim that the BBC were taking their temperatures from the ground on the tarmac of airports, Neil Oliver claimed. And of course, their resident climate scientist, who's actually a manager for water resources in Cornwall and is not even a climate scientist, giving us accurate reporting on climate change.
Tim talked about wildfires.
Okay, there we are. There's wildfires. Now, what they've done, Biden hid this. When he came to power, he had this deleted from the official forestry record.
I think we'd all agree, accurate reporting, as always, from GB News.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land.
Who falls for this rubbish? Oh God, get Moggy on, get a tractor going past, He's the English gentleman, you should trust him. He's the English gentleman, he has your best interests at heart, doesn't it? It's not like that he was praising the amount of food banks that we're getting and saying it's an incredibly Christmassy thing. It's not like recently he was trying to say that the money we save from HS2 we can put on inheritance tax, lower inheritance tax. Because that's his life. He's just inherited. That's all he's done with his life, just inherited. But no, GB News viewers, look at the English gentleman with his tractor.
Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Do you know what? I love dogs, but Daisy. Daisy for having anything to do with Jacob Rees-Mogg. Daisy should know better.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Monday, the 27th of November.
No, it's not. It's Tuesday the 28th of November.
So it is.
2 seconds in. 2 seconds in, and he's already fucked up. Oh, you gotta love Tom Harwood. You've got to love Tom Harwood. Literally, the first second, the first thing he has to say, and he's already fucked up. At least he's got a co-presenter on with us this time, because GB News have obviously realised that he can't be trusted to present a segment on his own. He needs someone to help him, bless him.
Now, today, Michael Gove is before the COVID inquiry, and there's already been a number of interesting flashpoints. He has also raised the prospect that COVID was man-made rather than accidentally found in a wet market.
And he was slapped down, was he not, by the lawyer? There at the inquiry. That was not a line of questioning that the lawyer was interested in.
It certainly wasn't.
Well, no, because the COVID inquiry is there to look at the government's dealings with COVID, to find where they went wrong, where there was corruption, where there was blatant corruption. It's not there to find out the source of COVID. That's not what it's there to do. So if Gove is trying to bring up these things, he's obviously trying to deflect the attention away from where the inquiry is supposed to be heading, which is looking into how the government dealt with COVID. Seems completely reasonable to me.
We'll be getting more to that in the second half of this hour. Indeed, we'll be speaking to a former advisor to Michael Gove as well. I think the most important thing that this shows is that the inquiry almost has these sort of guidelines that it's running on, and it doesn't want to veer one way off or another way off. It sort of has its own set questions and it knows what it wants to ask. And when some...
Exactly. Because it's trying to find out how the government dealt with COVID, if there was any corruption, if there was people that were at the top of government that were seriously incompetent. That's exactly what this inquiry is for. It's not there to be deflected by Michael Gove into looking at the source of COVID. I think there should be a massive inquiry into the source of COVID, but that's not what this is. This is an inquiry to find out how this government handled COVID.
Someone offers something potentially off track, something potentially interesting, or in, I think, our view, pertinent to where the inquiry should be looking, they just don't want to hear it.
But my impression is that lockdown as an idea there's a consensus that it was the right thing to do. There doesn't seem to be, correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, but there doesn't seem to be anyone who's been asked whether lockdown was the right decision at all. It seems to be the focus has been on, was it not long enough? Was it not soon enough? Should it have been put in place sooner rather than later, and longer, harder restrictions and so on? But no one seems to be actually questioning whether lockdown as a tool for virus control was the right one.
Yeah, because most people have come to the conclusion that if we'd not had any lockdown at all, it would have been absolutely catastrophic. Most sensible people with a slight bit of intelligence would know if we did not lock down at all, thousands and thousands upon more people would have died. The NHS would not have been able to cope. And I can't stand this. There's so many empty-headed people out there that still have this conclusion, and people on GBNews do as well, that we shouldn't have locked down. That is absolutely insane. The NHS would not be able to cope. That was the sole purpose of locking down, is because, okay, you can have the mentality if you want to that we should have had a survival of the fittest attitude during COVID and just brunted it out. But the NHS would not have been able to cope. Everyone else with cancer or whatever other problems they've got would not have been able to get the attention they deserved because the NHS would have been overwhelmed. Anyone that thinks that not locking down would have been a serious actual option during COVID in this country, and that's the key thing in this country, because I've said previously, people always point to countries like Sweden that didn't lock down. You can't compare different countries. Every single country is different. The UK has a population of nearly 70 million people. It has an NHS that has been vastly underfunded and crucially understaffed for the last 13 years. They would not have been able to cope. Sweden, it didn't do as well as other Nordic countries like Norway and Finland. They didn't lock down, but they had a much better run National Health Service, a much better funded and staffed National Health Service, and a much smaller population with much more rural areas. You can't compare the two countries. If the UK did not lock down, it would have been horrendous. There would have been 1,000 more needless lives dead. And anyone but it seems to be a popular opinion that we shouldn't have done lockdowns. And it's spreading like wildfire, and it absolutely amazes me that anyone would have this opinion.
We haven't had evidence to that extent yet. What we have had is this morning Michael Gove saying what an unusual thing lockdown was, how against the tradition of British liberty it was, and what a heady thing it would have been to dive into. And I think often we think about now, oh, why didn't they just press the lockdown button? As if this was something that was even considered in January, in February, and even in the beginning of March 2020. In fact, some of these...
Well, it's definitely considered in March 2020. They were already doing it in Italy. Oh, God, Tom Hartford. Such bullshit.
Sage minutes show that what was then termed heavy suppression, before the word lockdown even entered our vocabulary, was rejected by the scientists as something that they didn't think was even possible, viable, or able to last any length of time at all.
Michael Gove has said... he said that he read articles about the case against lockdown, apparently. So he was looking at different options. He did have a look at the Swedish approach, which, of course, was more liberal. It wasn't complete freedom, but it was more liberal than what we saw here and in many other countries. And, of course, he has said, one of the things he has said, and this is leading a lot of bulletins, although I think much of what we've said is maybe more important, but he has apologised for mistakes the government made. So he has apologised.
Michael Gove is doing what Michael Gove always does and tries to find some opportunity in every situation that arises for him to come to power. He's going to now appeal to this lot, the anti-lockdown lot, the pro-conspiracy theory lot, these guys. He's found an opportunity. He's done it with the bloody riots in the Cenotaph and going on to Waterloo Station when there's a massive protest on, knowing that he'd be absolutely hated, to try and come out as some sort of hero. This is what Michael Gove does. He always does this, and he always fails, generally.
Right, Tom and I have migrated to the sofa, which means it's time to reintroduce our panel for the hour. Historian and broadcaster Rafe Hadel-Manku and former Labour Minister Bill Rammell.
Now, ITV has been accused of using insane, dirty tricks to limit Nigel Farage's airtime on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here.
Yes, this comes after a section showing Farage talking about his friend Donald Trump was removed from the show. ITV's since responded to the claims, defending how each episode is edited.
Yes, a spokesperson told GB News, "We are a 60 to 75-minute entertainment show, and the content featured is a fair and accurate representation of life in the camp." Do you think that ITV regret inviting him on?
No, I don't. I mean, look, the reality is that in any show like this, an awful lot goes on the cutting room floor and doesn't make it into the final cut. But I made the point earlier, I mean, I strongly disagree with Nigel Farage. And one of the biggest reasons I disagree with him is that he presents simplistic solutions to very complicated issues and solutions that don't work. And he's not getting that scrutiny on this programme. And I think that may be the reason, given ITV's duty for impartiality, why they're cutting some of it out, because he's not being challenged and he's not being scrutinised. And look, Nigel is an established, effective politician. Putting him amongst all those celebs is not effective scrutiny.
But they knew.
Completely agree. This is my quarries. This was my issues with Nigel Farage on this show in the first place, is that he won't be properly scrutinised. These celebs that he's surrounded with, I don't mean to be rude, but it's not even being rude. They're just not into politics, and not everyone is, so they don't have the knowledge to be able to scrutinise him, and he's just got free rein to talk absolute rubbish and fill empty-headed people's minds with his rhetoric, and I completely agree with this guy. But is it a case of GB News not actually being able to understand that ITV have impartiality rules that they have to keep to? I don't know. Anyway, it's enough of Tom Harbour today. I'm done. That's enough GB News for me today. To be honest, Tom Harbour's not as funny now he's got someone, a co-presenter, to actually pull him up on things. I think he's funnier when he's on his own, because he's more of an idiot and gets things wrong more often. If you enjoyed the video, click a like, and if you haven't subscribed, you can subscribe up top. There should be another video there. You can check that out as well. Till next time, take care.